Some machines fade into history. The Kawasaki KZ1000 didn't. Built for speed, trusted by police, and immortalized in pop culture, it became more than metal. It became myth. And the real story is even wilder than you think. Watch until the end, because this legend has secrets worth uncovering. The secret weapon on two wheels. The shocking truth about the Kawasaki KZ1000 engine is that it was never built with hobbyists in mind. It was not designed for weekend riders looking for thrills or casual commuters searching for fuel economy. Instead, it was created as a secret weapon for police departments that needed something faster, tougher, and more reliable than anything else on the road. At a time when criminals were pushing cars to their limits and outpacing older patrol bikes, law enforcement required a motorcycle engine that could dominate in a chase. The KZ1000 was Kawasaki's answer, and it quickly became the backbone of American and international police fleets. In the late 1970s, police officers were facing an escalating problem. High-performance cars were getting faster, and the motorcycles in service often lacked the power to keep up. Kawasaki engineers stepped into this challenge with an idea that bordered on radical. Build a machine that would give officers an undeniable edge. They created an engine that could roar to life instantly, accelerate with unmatched urgency, and keep pushing mile after mile without faltering. It was not just a tool, it was a statement of force and authority on two wheels. The result was an engine that felt less like a civilian product and more like military hardware. Its reputation spread quickly, not because of advertising campaigns, but because police officers themselves spoke about how dependable it was in the heat of pursuit. The KZ1000 earned its place as a trusted companion in law enforcement, setting the stage for a legacy that would outlive its official service. To understand why officers swore by this engine, you have to look at the design decisions Kawasaki made when no compromise was allowed. Designed for authority. The KZ1000 was engineered with precision and purpose. At its core sat a double overhead camshaft, 998 cubic centimeter inline-4 engine. It was capable of producing well over 100 horsepower, a figure that was remarkable for its time. More important than the raw number was the way this power arrived. The torque curve was strong and steady, giving officers smooth but forceful acceleration from low speeds all the way to highway pursuits. This meant that an officer could launch from a standstill at a traffic light or chase down a suspect weaving through lanes at high speed, and the engine would deliver without hesitation. Durability was the second pillar of its design. Kawasaki knew that police departments could not afford machines that broke down in the middle of duty. Reinforced gearing, heavy-duty alternators, and robust cooling systems ensured the engine could withstand long hours of idling in city traffic and sudden bursts of full-throttle performance. Every component was tested with the idea that reliability was not optional, but mandatory. The choice of an inline-4 configuration also gave the KZ1000 a unique advantage. It balanced smoothness with strength, reducing vibration compared to twin-cylinder engines. Officers riding long shifts could stay in the saddle longer without feeling fatigued, and this mattered in patrol work that often stretched across entire days. Kawasaki essentially built an engine that blended brute strength with practical endurance, making it unmatched among police motorcycles of the era. Design, however, means nothing if it cannot prove itself under real pressure. That test would come when officers took the machines into the field. You've stayed with me this far, and if the KZ1000's legacy fascinates you as much as it does me, make sure you subscribe. More hidden stories like this are coming, and you won't want to miss them. Tested in the line of duty. On the training grounds, the KZ1000 quickly earned respect. Police recruits who were still learning the art of motorcycle control found that the engine delivered consistent, predictable power. It started every time with the push of a button, never faltering even after repeated drills. Instructors noted that the bike could withstand mistakes from new riders without developing issues, something other motorcycles of the era often failed to manage. The true test, however, was not in training, but in real-world pursuits. Stories spread through departments of officers pushing the KZ1000 to extraordinary limits. Highway patrol units reported that the engine could sustain speeds that once seemed impossible for a police motorcycle, giving them the ability to chase down muscle cars and sports cars that would have left older machines behind. In urban settings, the combination of torque and reliability meant that officers could weave through traffic, restart instantly after sudden stops, and trust the engine to deliver power without stalling. For many officers, the KZ1000 became more than a machine. It was a partner. In an era before advanced radios and GPS trackers, the bike itself was often the difference between catching a suspect and losing them. Trust in the engine translated into confidence on the job, and that confidence built loyalty. Riders who served on the KZ1000 often carried the memory of its reliability for the rest of their careers. As those stories spread beyond the force, curious civilians began to ask if they too could ride the very machine trusted by the badge. The legend was built on toughness. Want the same confidence on your bike? We've put together must-have tools and accessories. Check the description below. From badge to back roads, it did not take long for civilians to notice that something unusual was happening. Riders watching police officers thunder past on the highway began asking questions. What engine could deliver that much speed and still take the punishment of daily duty? The answer was the KZ1000, and soon enthusiasts wanted one of their own. Kawasaki, recognizing the growing demand, began offering civilian versions that shared the same DNA as the police model. These bikes were no longer limited to law enforcement fleets. They became available to everyday riders who craved the same reliability and power. Suddenly, what had been a tool of authority turned into a symbol of speed and endurance in the public eye. Motorcycle magazines of the time could not resist covering the crossover. Articles praised the engine for its toughness, noting that if it could survive the rigors of patrol life, it could certainly handle the needs of weekend riders. Civilian owners discovered that the engine's strength translated beautifully to long road trips, track days, and everyday commuting. The once exclusive police weapon was now building a cult following among enthusiasts who appreciated its blend of strength and simplicity. That curiosity opened the floodgates, carrying the KZ1000 out of police garages and onto the streets of everyday riders. Civilian temptation. The late 1970s and early 1980s saw a dramatic shift in motorcycle culture. Riders who once relied on smaller, more modest machines suddenly had a chance to own something built with the same backbone as a law enforcement tool. Kawasaki seized this opportunity, releasing civilian models of the KZ1000 that mirrored the durability and performance of their police counterparts. For many riders, this was irresistible. If the engine could endure the daily abuse of patrol life, then surely it could handle the demands of weekend rides and long-distance touring. The KZ1000 arrived at a moment when the motorcycle market was hungry for speed and reliability. Enthusiasts were no longer satisfied with engines that performed well only under specific conditions. They wanted something that could deliver dependable power, whether on city streets, open highways, or winding back roads. The KZ1000 gave them exactly that. With over 100 horsepower and a smooth inline-4 configuration, it offered both raw speed and refined control, an unusual combination for the time. Riders flocked to dealerships drawn by the machine's reputation. Stories from police officers had already trickled into public conversations, and word of mouth spread quickly. Buying a KZ1000 was not just a purchase. It was a statement of owning the same kind of machine trusted by those who chased criminals for a living. Civilian adoption was strong, but what truly catapulted the KZ1000 into legend was its sudden leap into pop culture. Pop culture spotlight. The KZ1000's leap into stardom began with one of the most iconic television shows of the late 1970s, CHIPS. Viewers across America tuned in to watch California Highway Patrol officers racing through Los Angeles freeways, and at the center of that action were Kawasaki KZ1000 police bikes. Millions of households saw the motorcycle every week, and it was no longer just a tool of law enforcement. It became a symbol of speed, order, and authority woven into American entertainment. The exposure did not stop there. In the early 1990s, the KZ1000 returned to the spotlight with an unforgettable appearance in Terminator 2. Judgment Day. The chase sequence featuring Arnold Schwarzenegger roaring through Los Angeles streets on a police KZ1000 cemented the engine's place in cinema history. For younger generations, the bike was no longer about patrol duty. It was the machine that carried a cybernetic hero through one of the greatest action films ever made. These appearances gave the KZ1000 a dual identity. On the one hand, it remained a practical, durable tool used by departments across the country. On the other hand, it became an aspirational symbol for fans who associated it with television heroes and blockbuster action. Few motorcycles achieved this kind of crossover, and the KZ1000 thrived in both worlds. Screen fame gave the KZ1000 recognition, but it was the passion of real riders and collectors that turned it into a lasting community. Enthusiast devotion. While television shows and films gave the KZ1000 mass visibility, the engine's real afterlife came from its passionate community of owners and fans. Motorcycle forums, clubs, and collector circles blossomed throughout the 1980s and 90s. Riders praised the machine for its durability, often bragging that it just kept going after decades of use. Some compared it to an old warhorse, a machine that seemed unkillable no matter how hard it was ridden. Collectors revered the KZ1000, trading restoration tips, sharing photos, and calling rides a rite of passage. Many said it felt more alive than modern bikes. Ownership meant holding history, blending law enforcement authority with the enduring glamour of Hollywood. Local motorcycle clubs hosted events centered around the bike, treating it less as a consumer product and more as an artifact of identity. Owners often spoke about the pride of having a motorcycle that symbolized power, reliability, and cultural significance all at once. The KZ1000 was no longer just an engine, it was a community anchor. Yet even among its most loyal fans, whispers of flaws began to surface, challenging the myth of perfection. Flaws behind the legend. For all its glory, the KZ1000 was not without weaknesses. The very features that made it formidable on the highway also introduced challenges. At over 600 pounds, the machine was heavy, and that weight made it difficult to handle in tight corners or crowded city streets. Riders accustomed to lighter bikes sometimes found the KZ1000 intimidating, especially at low speeds where balance was critical. The KZ1000 suffered a notorious high-speed wobble. Its powerful engine outpaced the chassis, causing instability during pursuits. Riders described the front end shaking loose. Kawasaki made adjustments, yet the reputation endured, reminding everyone that immense power demanded disciplined handling. Vibration at sustained high speeds was another complaint. Though the inline-four smoothed much of the ride, the intensity of the engine meant that long trips could leave riders fatigued. Some owners loved the rawness, comparing it to riding a living beast, while others longed for more comfort. These flaws did not erase the KZ1000's achievements, but they did reveal its dual nature. It was both a marvel of reliability and a reminder of engineering limits. The legend carried scars, and those imperfections only added to its complex story. Those weaknesses raised a deeper question. What exactly lay beneath the steel and chrome of Kawasaki's most famous police engine? Engineering anatomy. What gave the Kawasaki KZ1000 its reputation for indestructibility was not just raw power, but the careful thought that went into its engineering core. At a glance, it looked like any other inline-four of its time, but once examined closely, it revealed a series of smart design decisions that made it perfect for long-duty hours. The carburetors were simple yet effective, designed for consistent fuel delivery under varied conditions. Even after years of use, many police bikes retained their original carburetors, a testament to the reliability of their design. Cooling was another essential factor. The air-cooled system worked efficiently even under the punishing heat of city traffic or extended highway patrols. Unlike some contemporaries that overheated quickly, the KZ1000 managed to keep its temperature stable. Kawasaki also upgraded the charging system, fitting heavy-duty alternators capable of powering radios, lights, and other police equipment without draining the battery. For law enforcement, this was critical. A stalled engine meant more than inconvenience. It could mean losing a suspect. Durability extended into the drivetrain as well. The reinforced shaft drive was built to handle high torque loads, ensuring fewer breakdowns during pursuits. The balance of these elements meant that the KZ1000 could start at dawn, idle through rush hour patrols, and still roar at full throttle on the freeway without complaint. That same bulletproof engineering created new challenges when riders pushed the machine to its very limits of speed. The pursuit problem. The KZ1000's reputation for speed was both its greatest strength and its most dangerous liability. Officers quickly discovered that while the engine delivered exhilarating power, the chassis sometimes struggled to contain it. At very high speeds, particularly during highway pursuits, the bike could develop an unnerving instability. Riders described it as a wobble in the front end, a vibration that grew more violent the faster they went. Departments trained officers to manage wobble with controlled acceleration, careful weight distribution, and steady handling. Some adjusted suspension, others stressed firm grips and smooth steering. These efforts lowered risks, yet the KZ1000's reputation for instability at high speeds endured. It was a paradox. The same torque and horsepower that gave officers dominance on the road also demanded extreme discipline to control. Many officers learned to respect the machine as much as they relied on it. Riders often joked that the KZ1000 was like a powerful partner, loyal but quick to remind you who was really in charge if you got careless. The struggle for control gave rivals an opening, and soon police departments were divided between two very different visions of the perfect patrol bike. Rivalry on the streets. Not every police department in America was convinced that Japanese engineering was the future. Harley-Davidson had been the traditional choice for decades, and many officers remained loyal to the iconic American brand. For them, riding a Harley was about more than machinery. It was about heritage, patriotism, and comfort. Harley motorcycles offered broad saddles, a lower center of gravity, and a smoother ride during long patrols. Departments that valued officer comfort and the image of tradition often stuck with Harley fleets. On the other hand, Kawasaki's KZ1000 offered undeniable advantages in speed, acceleration, and reliability. Departments that prioritized performance over tradition quickly embraced the Japanese machines. The rivalry became almost philosophical. Was it better to ride a symbol of American identity, or was it wiser to adopt a foreign machine that simply performed better under pressure? This debate played out across the country, with some states running Harley fleets while others filled their garages with Kawasaki units. The split highlighted the cultural tension of the time, a clash between nostalgia and progress, comfort and raw performance. Officers themselves often had strong opinions, with some swearing by the indestructible Japanese inline four and others refusing to give up the rumbling familiarity of a Harley twin. Yet neither loyalty to tradition nor devotion to innovation could hold back the tide of change that was sweeping the industry. The end of an era. By the early 2000s, the age of the Kawasaki KZ1000 police engine was drawing to a close. Emissions regulations grew stricter year after year, and air-cooled carbureted engines struggled to keep pace with the demands of a changing industry. Electronics were becoming standard, from fuel injection to advanced braking systems, and the KZ1000's architecture, brilliant in the 70s, was showing its age. Departments phased out KZ1000s, adopting newer bikes that met emissions rules and handled better. Reliability was never doubted, with many still flawless after decades, yet rising parts scarcity made repairs costlier than simply moving to modern machines. For officers who had spent their careers on the KZ1000, the transition was bittersweet. Many described the bike as more than a tool. It was a companion that had carried them safely through countless shifts. Its retirement felt like the closing of a chapter in law enforcement history. As the KZ1000 disappeared from service, its story was far from over. It was only shifting into an entirely new legacy. The collector's market. When the Kawasaki KZ1000 finally disappeared from active duty, it did not vanish into obscurity. Instead, it entered a second life on the collector's market. Retired police bikes, once sold off cheaply at government auctions, began rising in value as enthusiasts realized their historical importance. What had once been an affordable way to get a used motorcycle became a prize for restorers and fans eager to preserve a piece of law enforcement history. The aftermarket around the KZ1000 adapted quickly, with suppliers offering rare parts. Scarcity made original carburetors, fairings, and police accessories treasures, turning restoration into storytelling. Every dent or scratch symbolized late-night pursuits or endless patrol shifts. Prices rose steadily. What could once be bought for a few $100s in the 1990s began selling for several thousand by the 2010s. Fully restored examples now command premium prices, especially if they include authentic police features. The collector's market transformed the KZ1000 from a used tool into a cherished artifact. Beyond auction blocks and restoration garages, the bike earned another kind of immortality in museums and cultural memory. A cultural afterlife. Motorcycle museums and shows across the world have embraced the Kawasaki KZ1000 as a permanent fixture. Visitors walk past gleaming rows of vintage Harleys and Ducatis only to pause at the sight of the unmistakable police Kawasaki, often displayed with period-correct lights and sirens. These exhibits capture the imagination because they embody both authority and rebellion, a machine built for law enforcement that also became a cult symbol among civilians. Tribute builds also play a significant role in the KZ1000's afterlife. Custom builders recreate classic police versions, complete with black and white paint schemes, while others take the core engine and craft personalized restorations that highlight its performance legacy. At motorcycle shows, crowds gather around these builds, not because the bikes are the fastest on display, but because they carry a story everyone recognizes. Nostalgia is the glue that keeps the KZ1000 alive. For some, it recalls evenings watching CHIPS on television. For others, it brings back memories of being pulled over by an officer on one of these bikes. And for retired officers themselves, it is a reminder of the long shifts and trusted partnership they once had with the machine. The emotional pull is undeniable, and it ensures the KZ1000 remains a beloved figure long after its production stopped. This cultural devotion would not have been possible without the lessons the motorcycle industry itself learned from Kawasaki's experiment. Lessons for the industry. The Kawasaki KZ1000 taught the motorcycle industry an important truth. Reliability can be just as revolutionary as speed. At a time when manufacturers often chased higher horsepower numbers, Kawasaki demonstrated that consistent performance and durability could define a legend. Police departments valued it not only because it was fast, but because it was predictable. That lesson shaped future law enforcement motorcycles and influenced Kawasaki's own product line for decades. Later, Kawasaki models borrowed heavily from the reliability benchmarks set by the KZ1000. The emphasis on robust charging systems, durable drivetrains, and practical maintenance schedules can be traced back to lessons learned during its years of service. Even outside the Kawasaki brand, rival manufacturers recognized that departments and consumers demanded machines that would not quit under stress. For law enforcement agencies, the KZ1000 set expectations that every future patrol bike would be measured against. Departments evaluating newer machines often ask the same question: could this bike endure as long as the Kawasaki? That benchmark lingered long after the final KZ1000 was retired, shaping procurement decisions and guiding the development of competitors. Yet while its influence shaped engineering priorities, the march of time brought new technologies that the KZ1000 could never match. Electronic fuel injection, anti-lock braking systems, and emissions compliance redefined what a police motorcycle needed to be. The KZ1000 remained a respected teacher, but the classroom was changing rapidly. Those lessons reshape the present, but the future belongs to a new era of machines that will test whether icons like the KZ1000 can ever be repeated. You've stayed with me this far, and if the KZ1000's legacy fascinates you as much as it does me, make sure you subscribe. More hidden stories like this are coming, and you won't want to miss them. Subscribe now and join a community that keeps legends alive. Icons in a changing world. Today, as electric motorcycles begin appearing in police fleets, the Kawasaki KZ1000 stands as a relic of a very different era. Departments experimenting with battery-powered patrol bikes emphasize silence, zero emissions, and low maintenance costs. These modern machines may outperform the KZ1000 in efficiency, but they cannot replicate its visceral appeal. The roar of the inline-4, the vibration of the frame, and the physical presence of the machine are elements an electric motor cannot provide. This shift highlights a broader truth. The KZ1000P may be the last great mechanical symbol of reliability and speed in law enforcement. It represents a period when engineering mastery was measured by how long an engine could run without failing, rather than by how little carbon dioxide it produced. In that sense, the KZ1000 is more than a motorcycle. It is a cultural milestone marking the end of the internal combustion age for police departments. For enthusiasts, this only increases its value. Each surviving machine becomes a tangible reminder of the era before electrification, a time when the sound of an engine was inseparable from its identity. Museums, collectors, and riders all recognize that the KZ1000 is not just history but heritage. Its presence bridges the gap between the mechanical past and the digital future. As electric fleets grow, the Kawasaki KZ1000's legend will not fade but sharpen. It will be remembered not only for what it accomplished, but for what it symbolized, the peak of mechanical trust at a moment when machines were as dependable as the men and women who rode them. You've stayed with us this far, and if the KZ1000's legacy fascinates you as much as it does us, make sure you subscribe. More hidden stories like this are coming, and you won't want to miss them. Subscribe now and join a community that keeps legends alive.